Hello, this is M4, and I am doing an all-cards beginner route tutorial for Pape races today. They have asked me to do so as there was nobody on the team who had run this route before, so they had to outsource a little bit and get some help for getting that done. So here I am. Just a couple quick things. This route only does 8 tricks. It is an excellent jumping in point for beginners who want to get into the all cards category. However, I am going to assume that you know where you're going and what you're doing for most parts of this route. The route itself is very descriptive, and there are plenty of excellent resources to be used along this tutorial on Paper Mario Archives, and you can always ask questions in the speedrunning Discord as well. So before we get too into things, you'll notice that on the bottom left there's an input display. This is up because the run was done on the practice ROM. Shoutouts to JCOG for getting that implemented and making it widely available. I believe Vladimir Lenin and Rain Shoes have also worked on it, as well as some others, I think. So, shoutouts to everybody who made this possible. The input display is going to make it a lot easier to explain what's going on. If you do not know how to do something that you see in this tutorial, you can always go back and rewind and look at the input display to see exactly what's going on. So, we won't be spending too much time on any one individual thing in this tutorial. Now, something that I do want to make clear is that while this category only has 8 tricks, it is still not easy to execute, and there are points in this route where you can die. I will be mentioning these before we get to them, and letting you know that you should save before anything happens. I will make a point to note where the dangerous parts are, as there are substantial parts of the run where we are running around in peril without any backup life shrooms. Something important to note that you can implement into your gameplay immediately if you haven't heard of this before. There's a technique called quick jumping that you'll be able to see me utilizing here. Whenever Mario is walking up to an enemy preparing a jump attack, you'll notice that he goes into a crouch animation for a varying amount of time. This animation is 10 frames long, and it's just a pose of him squatting. And if you press the A button during that animation, Mario will jump immediately, saving you up to 10 frames per jump. Something worth noting, however, about the quick jumping technique is that if you do it too late, or if you mash in order to do it, you can potentially lock yourself out of the action command. So if you're doing it at any point after getting the Lucky Star in Prologue, you can potentially kill your run. So it's generally much better to time it as opposed to mashing the button, except in Prologue where you don't have action commands anyway. You'll notice here that we're mashing A and start in order to advance out of that white screen as quickly as possible. I'm personally not sure if it's the A input or the start input that actually does it, but A and start is the wisdom passed down through the Pape generations about how to quickly advance those screens. For reference, those are the beginning of chapter screens. So that was the prologue one. In this run, I believe we'll be seeing the ones for chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 4, and chapter 6, and chapter 8. So we don't see all of them, but you can lose time if you're not ready to quickly advance those, which is why I bring that up. It's at this point that we're going to start seeing the first major divergences from other routes in this game in general, although this route in particular is going to not do junior skip, and it's going to pick up several bush coins. I feel like I don't need to explain why we're not doing junior skip in a beginner tutorial, but for anyone who's unaware, you do around, depending on your angles, you do around 15 double frame perfect jumps to store the loading zone and get to the hammer bush and shake it without fighting Junior Drupa upon exiting the room. So you'll see here we got 3 bush coins. For any coin collecting, this is necessary so that we can make our purchases at the shop and still buy Speedy Spin later. So in this route, we need a total of 15 coins. We need 15 coins for the shop, and we need 50 for Speedy Spin, so we need 65 in total. We get our first 13 in this room. You'll notice here that we are still mashing A for quick jumps because it's prologue. We do not have the lucky star yet, so no action commands. This fight is just a slugfest. Here's 4 more coins and a fire flower. You cannot forget that. That is actually incredibly important. Through this room, I want to just note that going across the top is pretty dangerous. If you're a beginner, you're probably going to want to go across the bottom of that room, just to be safe. It ends up being further away from the enemies. You can still take the top if you're feeling confident. There's nothing wrong with that, but your movement needs to be on point to avoid an encounter. And if you get an encounter, at this point in the game, it loses far more time than if you did so after Chapter 1, because you have to pick up your coins. Here we get our first badge and partner. Power jump is useful several points throughout the run, mostly through the beginning, and then again at the end, on Final Bowser actually. We also get our first partner, who is significantly less important. If you don't equip Power Jump before breaking that block, Goompapa gives you a lecture about equipping your badge. So these rooms are rather dangerous. You're going to want to rewind and look at the Goomba Road movements if you're having trouble with the encounters in that room. It's very tight, honestly one of the more difficult places to avoid encounters, and it's like 10 minutes into the game. You definitely want to lure the Spike Goomba, and the movement around the 2 in the first room is just a little bit, it's a little bit fancy, but it's easier than it looks. So, again, if you have any questions, go back and look at the input display, and it'll tell you basically what you need to do. So for this fight, we want to kill Red and Blue Goomba at the same time, so we do 4 damage to Red and 3 damage to Blue, because they have 6 and 7 HP, with Power Jump and Head Bonk, and then we Fire Flower them at the end. Doing nothing with Goombario on the second turn is faster, just due to there not being an animation, and the damage from Head Bonk doesn't actually help. And this is one reason why it's dangerous to get encounters there, because if you take any damage on Goomba Road, you actually have to hit the heart block an extra time before the Goomba Bros fight, and then again afterward, just to make sure you survive. So definitely be careful there. Here's another fight to explain really quick. So this is basically just a 2-turn fight. It's even faster than the Goomba Bros, which is kind of funny. The Goomba King has 10 health, and there's this tree in the background you can target with either Mario or Goombario. So by doing a power jump on Goomba King and hitting the tree with Goombario, it does 6 damage to the King and clears out the Goomba Bros on the same turn. And you can only hit the tree once, unfortunately, but this fight is easily cleared with the second turn of just targeting down the King. There's a small time save coming up that I want to talk about really quick. You don't have to learn this, it's completely optional, but if you're on the Nintendo 64, saving your game on these menus that say with 3 options actually is slower than holding down and menuing to continue don't save. Over the course of an entire run, you save maybe a second from doing this like 8 times, so don't worry about it if you are not comfortable doing so, but it is worth learning. The reason it's faster is because the N64 lags when you save, and if you hold down as one of those menus pops up, it actually starts menuing before it's like fully initialized and visible to the player, so it can move, or it can get there really fast, and take advantage of the fact that the N64 is a potato to save time. Again, this is extremely unimportant, but it's worth mentioning, especially if you're getting into the game, because there are several small optimizations like that. This is going to be our first shopping trip of the run. You need to be sure you have at least 15 coins at this point. We are going to buy a fire flower and then a fright jar. These are for our fights in Chapter 1. If you have already lost more coins, then so many coins that you can't purchase those, which is not totally uncommon for a beginner. There are, I believe, 11 backup coins between the Sleepy Sheep on the screen before Toad Town and the Super Shroom in the level with the Goomba King. So if you're missing 11 coins, you can actually back yourself up there. There are more backup coins, I believe something in the realm of like 30 before Speedy Spin. We only have the fast ones routed in, and only the fast ones are used in this route. However, if you need more backup coins, there is a resource on Paper Mario Archives that will tell you where they all are. This is a fun fact rather than anything that has any bearing on the route, but the Lucky Star that Peach gives Twink in this cutscene that he later gives to Mario actually doesn't do anything. It's just a useless key item that sits in your inventory. The actual flag that allows you to perform action commands is set at the end of this cutscene rather than when Twink gives the item to Mario. You'll notice now we have action commands in this fight, which is the point where you stop mashing A for your quick jumps. Keep an eye on the input display for the timing on when to actually press it. So this Magic Koopa only has 8 HP. He's basically the tutorial boss on how to utilize action commands. So we just wipe him out with 2 quick power jumps. Worth noting as well, that we get healed on Shooting Star Summit, which is why we had the FP to do that in the first place. There's an optional trick here called Black Toad Skip. It is compatible with this route should you choose to do it, because it doesn't really change anything major. No fights are skipped, no items are skipped, etc. It's done by clipping out the right side into the post office using that green toad who's walking back and forth. If you have questions on how to do it, check out Paper Mario Archives. However, I stuck to only the bare minimum 8 tricks in order to finish this run. So I will not be showing you how to do Black Toad Skip today. Check out Paper Mario Archives if you're unsure or have any questions about any of these tricks. We're now heading into Chapter 1. This is another screen where you want to mash A and start in order to dismiss the screen as fast as possible. We're out of cutscene land now, so I will be taking a more active role in explaining things. So we get a second Fright Jar there for use in Chapter 1. Same with this POW block. The game really throws a lot of good free items at you here, so it's important to take advantage of all of the ones that you'll need to use in whatever route you're doing. This is a 10 coin block. Note that if you jump too fast, you will sometimes miss coins out of the block, because you may not hit it. You want to make sure that you're holding A for the full duration until Mario hits the block, in order to avoid that happening. This is normally a location where you would be doing your shopping. All other all-cards routes do their shopping in Koopa Village due to the higher price of items in Toad Town. However, given the routing, it is just faster to get a couple extra coins and spend them in Toad Town since we're only getting a couple items. If you're playing on English, you're gonna notice that the third round of this fuzzy game is significantly easier than on Japanese. This is a common failure point for newer runners, especially, and sometimes even experienced runners can be tripped up by this. The third round of the fuzzy minigame is much faster on JP than in all other versions. So the easy thing to do is to just kind of count how many bounces there are. I usually just go even, odd, even, odd, even, odd in my head personally. If it's an even number of bounces, then it's either in the tree that you're standing next to, or sorry, either the tree it started in, or 2 trees away from it. If it's an odd number, then it's, you know, either 1 or 3 trees away from the starting position. It will take practice to get used to this, so if you're feeling really unsure, it's not a bad idea to save. especially since there is an 80% chance of taking an extra fight if you get the minigame wrong. Just something worth noting, if you're an experienced Pape runner, you're probably not gonna be all too worried about that. Anyway, this is the use of the Fire Flower that we bought in Toad Town. All those fuzzies have 3 HP, so they just die instantly when you show them your Fire Flower. And now we have Cooper. You'll also notice, I'm not going to turn this into a full movement tutorial, but there's an extra coin there, by the way, that we need. I won't turn this into a full movement tutorial, of course, because this is for all cards, but you'll notice that when Mario does a full spin, the optimal time to jump is when the pitch of the spin rises near the end of the animation, because this happens right before it starts to slow down. So if you're having trouble moving optimally, which, you know, almost nobody moves perfectly, but if you're having trouble with that, try listening for the uptick in pitch near the end of the attack. So this guy will get you sometimes. It's a combination of RNG and the approach you take. My approach here was a little lazy. So if you get an encounter, a good way to make sure you get all your coins back is to just go like a spin's length away and then react to them coming out. You want to be very careful because the absolute last thing you want to happen is to get another encounter while trying to pick up your coins. This time loss can compound very quickly and end up being run threatening, so just be very careful when you're getting your coins back after an encounter. And don't worry, sometimes it just happens, even to the top-level players of this game. The first strike here is not necessary. It's about a frame faster to first strike, if I'm not mistaken. But if you don't get it, doing a timed power jump and then using Power Shell is just about as fast. It is also 1 frame faster to block the Bob-omb in this fight, and this is our first level up. We take FP first. Every route does, I believe, because having more FP enables you to use stronger abilities and use them more often. Now, coming up here, we get Power Bounce, which is probably the strongest badge in the game when with its synergies taken into account. And now we're going to do Staircase Skip. Go back and look at the input display if you're confused about what's going on here. It's a little complicated, and it goes by pretty fast, so, you know, nothing wrong with having to go back and look at that again. Paper Mario Archives has a fantastic tutorial on that trick. The link to PMA will be in the description of this video, of course. But, now that I've said this, this route only has 8 mandatory glitches that we choose to do. So, the first one, the one that I just did, is Staircase Skip. It's pretty easy. The other 7 are Blue House Skip, Raphael Skip, Lackey Peach Warp, Mirror Clip, and that's all through Chapter 7. And then Block Clip, Fast Flutter Room, and Cannonless are done somewhat quickly in succession in Chapter 8. But you'll notice that only doing those 8 tricks actually ends up saving a lot of time over a glitchless run. There are a lot of optional tricks that you can do. If you're doing Clippy Boots, there's even more, but we'll let you guys look at the other tutorial for that. So, there are plenty of optional tricks, and I'll call them out when we get to them. But those 8 are the only mandatory tricks you're going to need to do to use this route. So if you're looking on getting into this, don't worry so much about card LZS, record skip, Bazaar skip, BTS, etc. Just focus on those 8. Anyway, now we have Bombette. This fight is a Fright Jar fight. We got really, really unlucky here, so if the Koopa doesn't run, you bomb him. If the bombs don't run, you just do basic attacks. We want to route our FP usage so that our so that we have 3 FP left before the cannon fight on the rooftop, if possible. In this case, because we got a dink on the Koopa, that is not possible. So we're going to worry about using 8 FP for the pit instead. And this is where you go after getting Bombette, because we need a key from here. These fights are pretty self-explanatory. We're going to try to kill them as fast as possible with 8 FP. We got an FP drop from the jail fight, so that actually really helps. So the fastest fight you can do is bomb, power jump, and then an untimed attack on these guys. We did have enough FP to do that. It was only 5, so no big deal. We have another Fright Jar here. So, thankfully, both of these guys run. But if you run out of FP, you just have to use basic attacks to kill them at this point, because we need our attack items for other fights. We want to first strike this guy here. The easiest way to do that is what I just did. You want to put Bombette down, get his attention, and then jump away or around him. That way he runs into Bombette and explodes. So again, if you need, sometimes you just won't get it, and that's okay. But also, a note for that previous fight, if you only have 2 FP due to getting a bunch of dinks or whatever, power jump into untimed body slam is just fine to finish off the other Koopa. And here we're gonna get 10 more coins from this fire bar. We do not need to break the other one. It's easy to forget this. After doing staircase skip, you do need to backtrack for this key, which is not something you normally do after going into the pit. So if you play glitchless a lot, your muscle memory might tell you to just go right, but please remember that key. It's very important, or you'll have to take a long trip back. In this next room, there's an optional trick called pie jumps. It ends up just being an abuse of poor collision to jump around the walls that are jetting out after hitting these switches. If you do pie jumps, you only have to watch the animation of the walls popping out or back in once, as opposed to the 4 times that you do if you don't do pie jumps. The first one saves about 9 seconds, and the second one saves 3 seconds, and is more difficult, so you can implement these however you want. You can implement, you know, just the first one, you can implement just the second one, or you can implement both of them. Whatever you're comfortable doing is fine. But overall, they only save about 12 seconds, so... and missing them costs you like 40 plus, so... If you're uncomfortable at all, I would recommend simply not doing them. It's also worth mentioning that we are doing Chapter 1 first, as you can see. This seems kind of obvious because we have no choice but to go in and get Bombette. You know, so we might as well finish Chapter 1 while we're here. But there's also the truth that unless you do retrigger Prologue, you actually can't get back into Chapter 1 after leaving it, because the very early game of Paper Mario does not have a lot of story triggers that you can reuse to place yourself in an earlier time. So definitely worth noting that you can't leave Chapter 1 and do other stuff. You have to do Chapter 1 first, unless you're doing retrigger Prologue, which is its own nightmare. But that's not relevant to all cards. In this case, it is simply just much faster to do Chapter 1 on the first go. Now, this is This place is very dangerous for coins. I would recommend just walking and jumping over the bullet bills when they come. If you hit the heart block while Bombette is exploding, it does not initiate the fight, as I discovered while doing that. You only need to hit that heart block if you have less than 3 FP, which we had because of the dink on the jail fight. So that is not normally something you're gonna have to do. If you're really fast, you can hit the heart block and then collect all 10 coins. This is not something I would recommend doing unless you're very comfortable with the movement on the rooftop. Oh, and we glossed over the cannon fight, but you actually do need the first strike with Bombette for that to work. If you give the cannons turns, they're going to shoot out bullet bills that you will also be killing, which gives you more EXP, which we don't want, because our EXP is tightly routed. Well, tightly routed given the variance that we can have in this route as a result of using 2 Fright Jars. So, here we're gonna just power jump, bomb, power jump to finish phase 1. Interesting thing about this fight is that when the phase ends, unlike General Guy, it does not start your turn over. So we want to knock Bowser, quote-unquote Bowser, out with Mario, so that Bombette is free on her turn to knock over the Koopa Bros when they pop out. As you can see, a bomb is one of the attacks that just knocks them over immediately, as opposed to needing 2 hits. And the 2 leftover items in our inventory are a POW block and a fire flower. We're gonna do nothing with Bombette, because her damage doesn't matter here. And use the fire flower to finish off the Koopa Bros in Chapter 1. This is the fastest way to do it by far, so make sure you don't accidentally use the POW block or the fire flower on something else, or it will really cost you at the end of Chapter 1. Since we're going to be doing the Peach scenes a little out of order in this category, I will basically explain what's going on. So, the post-Chapter 1-1, which is normal, it just has Peach going and reading Bowser's diary over here. So, all you gotta do is go read it and then press A on each of the prompts that pop up, and you'll be fine. So definitely make sure you're pressing B to skip the tutorials for Eldstar here. That tutorial is extremely long. So now we're heading back to Toad Town. This is another part where you're gonna wanna use C up to make sure you have 50 coins if you're not sure. That's how many we're going to need in order to purchase Speedy Spin, which is absolutely vital to our movement. We're picking up the honey syrup back here. This is used in a couple different places depending on RNG, but it is used in every run. So here's our second encounter with Junior Chirpa. This is pretty simple. We just power jump twice, bomb twice, and hammer him, and he's out. He's still fairly weak, even by early game standards, so he's not much of a threat. If you somehow miss an action command or something, you can just keep hitting him with hammer and body slam until he dies. Alright, so I alluded to this a moment ago, but we're about to purchase Speedy Spin. Or at least we're going to attempt to. So Ralph's badge shop only has 3 slots to display badges, but at this point in the run, after clearing Chapter 1, there are 4 different badges that can show up there. The problem with this means that there's a 1 in 4 chance that Speedy Spin does not show up in the badge shop. Unfortunately, Speedy Spin has not shown up in the badge shop. So the fastest way to refresh his inventory, and yes, this is much faster, Speedy Spin saves that much time, is you want to go 2 screens away. So we're going to go 2 screens away. The fastest way to do that is go down and then left. I hope you guys liked that Speedy Spin refresh movement. Let's show you again. So these are more or less the optimal lines. You want to spin right in front of Tasty's house, and then get back on the ground afterwards. Did you guys catch that movement? Let's do it again, just to be sure. You know, this movement is just so important. I really want to make sure you guys get it right, so we're gonna do this one more time. It is finally there, so... yeah, as you may have caught on by the fact that I mentioned that it's 1 in 4 for it to not be there, that was pretty unlikely. I'm not exactly sure what the % chance is for a 5th try Speedy Spin, but it's bad. Every time you have to reload the badge shop, it costs about 25 seconds. It can be a little more or a little less depending on how good your movement is, so... Having to reset the badge shop 4 times right there cost this run 100 seconds, roughly. which is very funny. It's quite annoying, and at world record level, that it absolutely is a reset point if you get too unlucky. So yeah, getting fifth try like that. Second try is 1 in 4. Third is 1 in 16. Fourth is 1 in 64. So that was that was a terrifying 1 in 256 chance to get that unlucky. But this run was a no reset for the purpose of a tutorial, so, you know, obviously we're not going to reset on something like that, but it is very remarkable how unlucky we got right there. So this is Chapter 2. We're going to be doing a few things here that are a little different from your typical all-cards run, that you might see somebody streaming record attempts or PP attempts on Twitch, so... it's going to start the same. We're going to collect 2 Whack-A-Bumps. I believe you need 3 if you get 2 unlucky with the Fright Jars, but that didn't happen here. We only had 2 dinks. So, we're gonna continue. We need to pick up the 3 letters for Parakarry for him to join our team. There is an optional trick in this room called Rock Climb that saves about 8 seconds if you don't have to go back and get the seed with Parakarry. It's somewhat precise. It's worth learning if you wanna get good at this game, especially if you're doing an expert route and end up doing early seed. It ends up saving like a lot more time due to the synergies between those 2 tricks. We will not be doing either of those here, and early seed was, you know, back a ways, but since we're going back with Parakarry, we did not do that either. So, after giving Parakarry these letters is our first major divergence from the Expert All-Cards route. Normally, Expert All-Cards with Clippy would have done Early Seed and Rock Climb to complete this section as quickly as possible. The reason that Early Seed in this route is not fast, and the reason for that is because we actually have to go to the desert. Unfortunately. So we have to get Parakarry. This is where we would get our 3rd Wacka, if you got a bunch of dinks. It's either 4 dinks with the route without the Chapter 4 LZS, or 2 dinks with the LZS, I believe. So that's something to look out for if you're doing Clippy. Or if you're not doing Clippy, sorry. There is an optional here called Buzzar Skip that skips this cutscene. It doesn't save all that much time, but it's pretty easy, so if you want to learn it, hit up Paper Mario Archives. You will not have to do this if you're doing Clippy Boots route. But we are going to end up talking to Buzzar 4 times in this run, which is kind of funny. So the reason we're coming over here is, well, I have to start with explaining Paper Mario's story triggers sequences. So your story progress in this game, which includes elements of, you know, just the world at large, is dependent on where you are in the story. And the game doesn't keep that close track of what you have done and haven't done. Instead, it uses a bit, I believe, that tells the game what the world should look like, because it refers to the bit when it's, like, loading rooms. So, What we're doing right there is because there is a story sequence update that happens only one time when you enter the first screen of the desert, and it reverts you to a mid-chapter 2 state. We do not want that, because that would mean that we would lose a lot of time later and have to do chapter 2 basically glitchless. You know, clearly we don't want that. A lot of the time save in Chapter 2 itself comes from entering it in a completed state. So we go out of our way to hit the first screen of the desert before leaving Mount Rugged, because it just saves a ton of time to do that backtrack. So now we're gonna head back to Toad Town and do our second mandatory trick of the run, Blue House Skip. We also need to hit this heart block at least once before heading back to Toad Town. Do not forget to do that. That would be run ending. It's that bad, so definitely hit the heart block. You can't do this the first time you take the train cutscene, but every time you do it after the first time, you can mash A and B to skip the cutscenes of the train heading back to Toad Town. So I'm gonna preface this with the fact that I cannot do normal BHS. It's a combination of me using a Hori Pad Mini and it having a tiny dead zone, and the fact that you need to be on the dead zone when you do the second jump off the corner of the house. So I do loading zone storage, Blue House Skip. Please do not do this unless it's your only choice. If you can do the normal BHS, just do it. Even if you fail it a couple times, it's still much faster than the method that I use. Definitely hit up Paper Mario Archives for a Blue House Skip tutorial. I'm not sure if it's out yet or coming soon, but there's going to be a really good one up on there for that trick. That trick also tends to keep people from running this game at all, so that's probably the most important one to practice. Anyway, now we're heading into Blooper. This is our first use of Power Bounce, which caps you randomly depending on a multiplier that the enemy has. The idea here is to keep track of his HP by keeping track of your caps. Right there, I must have gotten at least a 12 because I used Shell Shot. You just want to use your FP intelligently. If your caps are really, really bad, Power Bounce is a better use of 3 FP than Shell Shot is, just because it has more damage potential. So if you get unlucky, you'll want to just skydive with Paracarry and use the 3 FP for another Power Bounce instead. That fortunately did not happen here, but just keep in mind that you'll have to do some mental math while doing this fight if you want to have an optimal blooper. There's just no way around that, unfortunately. We're gonna take FP as our second level up for the same reason that we took it for the first. So right here is our best chance to pick up Sushi. She's not super important. She helps us for defeating Lava Piranha, because he is weak to her water-based attacks in Phase 2. But mostly we get her for moving around in the overworld. There are a couple points where we're going to need to use her ability. There's a Jammin' behind the tree. We will need that soon coming up, so you really want to make sure you get that Jammin' Jelly. And then head up to get Sushi afterwards. This guy can pin you to the wall. That Yellow Yoshi can. So if you're, you can avoid that entirely by jumping up onto the shop ledge, but it is a worse line. Whether or not you want to do that just to avoid what happened to me just now, it's totally up to you. It does not lose much time to jump up on that ledge. Our first big use of sushi is to collect the Power Quake badge right here. Now, funny story, we're going to... I'll demonstrate later what exactly happened there, but a glitch actually occurred when we got off sushi on that dock that caused the spear guy there to not attempt to first strike us, which is why jumping over him works right there. There will be another use of that later, but to sum it up, if you get off of sushi, or exit an encounter while having sushi as your active partner, or even if you just bat away something that an enemy throws at you while sushi is your active partner, it will disable their ability to attempt to first strike you. I don't know why this happens. I'm not sure anybody does, but it's used inevitably to get Power Quake, which is an important badge for fighting these Dark Koopas. Speaking of that, it does 4 damage and knocks him over, so it's the easiest way available to us at this point in the game to kill these guys. So, I made a small mistake here. I actually forgot to drink the honey syrup. If you get an FP drop or a POW block drop, you don't need to do this, but you need to drink your honey syrup here to make sure you have 8 FP, because you need that for each fight. And you'll also notice that I got first struck twice. We want to get into peril from getting first struck by all 3 of these guys. You will see why shortly. Now you'll notice our FP is low, so this is where we use the jam and jelly regardless of whether or not we had to use the honey earlier. We need 8 FP to take this third fight out as well. It's worth noting that in most fights that you run into, you can just run away from them, like these Dark Koopas and the moles, if you enter them with the wrong loadout for the fight, or in my case, if you forgot to eat the honey syrup, you can just run away, eat it, and then re-encounter, but make sure you don't get first struck an extra time, because you will die. You want to avoid the heart drop. You'll notice I kind of walked out of the way right there. It's okay if you have 2 HP, but if you have more than that, you're going to lose a significant amount of time in Chapter 3. Worth noting, there is an optional here. If you go in the left door here first, you can do record skip, which skips the record minigame and the wait minigame. It is pretty fast, but it's one of the more tricky things that you can learn in this game. It is frame perfect, and depending on how many bomb pushes you do, it is also position perfect. So you just, it's not something that we chose to show off in this tutorial, but it is worth noting because it saves a massive amount of time. If you end up playing this minigame, either here or in Glitchless, you'll note that the time when it's safe to take the record out is when the boo is fully to the left of that black line on the floor. Right there, you can see it. That's when it's safe to pull it out. If you have to redo that minigame, it costs you, like, probably 10 plus seconds, so be careful. So you might be wondering why we headed to Chapter 5 instead of why we headed to Chapter 3 instead of just clearing Chapter 5 while we were there. There's a couple reasons. First is that beating Chapter 3 from a story state past Chapter 3 saves a lot of time, which is what we're doing here. And the other reason is that the Super Boots, I can't recall, I don't think they're necessary for anything we want to do in Chapter 5, but they increase our damage by 1 point per hit on jump, which ends up being really important to Lava Piranha. We also cannot do Chapter 5 before Chapter 3, or before Chapter 2 in this route, because this route doesn't do Clippy Boots, and if you don't do Clippy Boots and you get the Super Hammer to overwrite your Ultra Hammer, you're actually soft-locked from getting the Ultra Boots, which is a pretty big problem. You can still finish the game without them, but you have to go really far out of your way to manage that, and you're also weaker for Bowser, which is generally not the play in any circumstances. So there are a few reasons that we do this, but we leave from Chapter 5 to go to Chapter 3, and then we go back to Chapter 5 later. So this cutscene gets us Bo. She doesn't do a whole ton, except in, like, 3 fights, but she is so absolutely vital to those 3 fights going well that skipping her reduces your chances of finishing a run like this to absolutely obscenely low percentages. So, Bo's important. Don't skip her. Please do not do this until your time is already well into sub-3-hour territory. Of course, you can do whatever you want when you're running the game, but reducing your odds of finishing to, like, under 20% and then losing several runs in a row to it is not fun, trust me. There's an optional trick coming up here in the next room called Stanley Save. It's a quick out of bounds that you can get using Paracarry, or even just jumping if you're a gamer, on that leftmost brown house. It lets you skip this cutscene. Saves roughly 24 seconds if you execute it well. But it does carry a small soft lock risk if you do not do it correctly, which is why it's not something that we're recommending to beginners picking up this route. So that Repel Gel we picked up is important for the general guy fight in Chapter 4. You do need that. If you skip that, you're gonna game over later, so be extra sure to pick that up. You want to take wide angles around this guy, because if you'll recall from the Dark Koopas, we are either in peril or at 2 HP, ideally at this point. So if you get first struck by any of these guys, you'll die. Be very careful. If you have any questions about how to get around them, look at the input display. And practice this movement, because we don't have a life shroom at this point. If you get hit by one of these guys, it's game over. And especially if this is if you're doing one of your first attempts, you're gonna want to hit the safe block outside the mansion, just to be extra safe. It's right there, you can kind of see it. We also upgraded Paracarry with that super block. That's for some extra damage on Shell Shot, which ends up being pretty important to the Chapter 3 boss fight and also Final Bowser. There's some more somewhat dangerous clubbas in this room, especially the one on the staircase. That guy is extremely dangerous. You can use bow for these hallways, by the way. It's okay, it's not that slow. But optimal movement, or close to optimal with Speedy Spin, is a lot faster. So you'll notice in this room here, this is the big spike room. You can do it without bow. It saves a lot of time to do so. This is also the room that you'll be taking voluntary damage in if you have more than 2 HP. We jump on the spikes to reset our position out of the room and get us into peril if we have 2. If you have more than 2, you want to make sure that you take spike damage until you only have 1 HP. And also worth noting that Clubba outside the spike room can first strike you, so be sure you're holding left and mashing spin upon exiting that room. Otherwise, there's a chance he'll get you and make you very sad. This is expert movement right there. Again, look at the input display if you want to do that. There's no shame in just walking and taking it slower, especially if you're new. Spinning down the perfect center of this room is optimal, and then holding down right to get off that platform. We made a small mistake there, but if you, whatever mistake you make in here is fine. If you don't get first struck, it doesn't matter. And also you'll note that I haven't been picking up the coins from runaways. That's because at this point in the run they're not important anymore. You'll also notice that you can overlap your eating an item animation with the lock falling off of the door. This saves, I think, a couple seconds every time you have the opportunity to do that. So, because I didn't have the honey syrup, I had to eat it in the Dark Koopa room. I actually picked up the maple a couple minutes ago, and that's what we end up eating there. Just remember that if there are any deviations in this tutorial from what the route says to do, always trust the route over this run, because, you know, sometimes things just happen. No run is perfect. There's another optional coming up here called Quick Escape. I'm not sure how much time it saves, but if you head back into the previous door after this cutscene, there's a spot you can line up in and use Paracarry's ability that'll let you get out of bounds and fall down to the bottom level of the castle. It saves a fair amount of time, but it's not vital to be able to do this, and also it's risky because you might encounter Tubba, who's really hard to run away from. If you do accidentally encounter Tubba Blubba during this sequence, switching to bow and using out of sight, assuming you have the FP to do so, will make him lose track of you and leave. In the previous room with the ghosts holding the door to Tubba's castle shut, you will probably get interrupted by Tubba Blubba saying the ghosts look tasty, or smell tasty, or whatever he says. It's RNG and movement based because it's a random number of frames before he starts speaking, so if you get the text, sometimes there's just literally nothing you could have done, so it's not worth worrying about that. Something worth noting in these 3 rooms is that if you encounter any of these Goombas, it actually sets the flag to them being defeated for some reason, so if you encounter them on the way there, they won't be there on the way back, even if you run away. Do not forget to rebadge here. It's Power Quake for Power Bounce, Speedy Spin for Mega Rush. If you forget to do this, you will game over here. So here's the fight with Tubba's Heart. This is our first boss. You want to aim for bounce times 6 and then bounce times 4. If you get 5 capped, that's fine. 5 plus 5 with a shell shot also kills him. If you get less than that, you may have to skydive or shell shot on the last turn, depending on if you have available FP. Either way, this boss should not be killing you unless you make a pretty big mistake. So there's 5 plus 5 and he's running away. He can randomly cap you anywhere between 6 and like 8 or 9 or something like that, but there's no reason to ever do bounces beyond 6. I realize I totally glossed over this, but we picked up Mega Rush in the castle. I think I was talking about Spike Room still. Mega Rush is vitally important for this route, so definitely make sure you remember to pick that up. As you can see, it makes our damage at 1 HP, like, absolutely ridiculous for the point in the game where we're supposed to be. So this is the first upgrade where we picked BP. Having 6 BP will serve us just fine for most of the route. You'll also notice that I split on the fade out of the boss instead of touching the card, if you were paying attention. The reason for that is that chapters 2, 3, and 4 all have card LZS to do in the expert all cards route, and I wanted the splits to emulate what the expert route does as much as possible. So people tend to split on card touch for chapters 1, 5, 6, and 7, and on the bosses for 2, 3, and 4. So that's what I did here as well. Now this is our second card touch. We're going to want to equip Power Quake and Speedy Spin before touching it. Having Speedy Spin off, even for a couple seconds, loses a lot of time, so we want to make sure that we have it on as much as possible, for the most part. So here, you'll notice we did not do card LZS. That's another optional trick. If you decide to do card LZS for the Chapter 3 card, you will have to kill the fuzzies in Chapter 4, so you'll have an extra fight. And you'll also want to hit your heart block on the way out of Chapter 3, but we're not doing that in this route. Definitely check out the Paper Mario Archives version of the intermediate route if you want to see what that looks like. So this Peach intermission is just talking to Bowser again. He's going to ask you what Mario's weaknesses are. You're going to want to answer 1, 3, and 1. 1 is the fastest option for all 3 inquiries, but 3 is the is the question that ends up skipping the fuzzies and placing a Thunder Rage there instead. So you want to hit 1, 3, and 1 in that order. The second one is the only one that truly matters, though. If you look at our star power at any point from now on, especially if you're only used to glitchless, you're gonna notice something a little weird. We now have 3 units of star power, which means we have Lullaby, despite not having beaten Chapter 2 yet. Which is where we're heading next, so... the rest of this is just heading to Chapter 2 and clearing the ruins. There are going to be a couple weird things about it, since we're entering from a game state where we have not cleared, or where we have cleared Chapter 2 already, or at least the game thinks that. But we don't have the Ultra Hammer, so the order in which we have to do ruins is somewhat unique. We also have to hit this guy since we're in a Chapter 4 state after touching the Chapter 3 card. If you do the Chapter 3 card LZS, that guy will not be there. This is the other part of the run where you can do Bazaar skip if you want to, but it's no big deal. I don't think it loses much time to not do it. I don't think I mentioned this before, but the option you want to choose is the second option. You want to tell Bazaar that you're Luigi to get him to leave you alone. Okay, so the reason that we came and entered the first screen of the desert earlier is now that when we head here, it will not reset to Chapter 2 when we enter this screen, or the first screen of the desert. If we hadn't come here earlier, the ruins wouldn't have been above ground when we attempted to enter them now. You'll also notice we got that Thunder Rage. It's for Chapter 6. So, things are gonna get a little wonky in here. If you watch Glitchless or, like, all cards on the Expert or World Record routes, you'll notice that neither of them do the ruins quite like this. So, the beginning is the same as the Expert all cards. You're gonna go in, get 2 keys, but because we don't have a hammer upgrade yet, we can't go to the right and get the first stone immediately. So the first thing we have to do upon entering the ruins is use our 2 keys to open up the path and go get the super hammer. Now this serves a couple purposes. One, it lets us actually clear the chapters because the stone chomps blocking off the keys to fight Toot and Koopa are they're locked behind a hammer upgrade. And 2, it resets your chapter progress to mid-chapter 2 while you're in the ruins. And the benefit to this is, while you have to do the ruins mostly glitchless, mostly being the keyword, because there are some weird things going on as a result of us having done DHS earlier. While it's mostly glitchless, we do get to skip a few sequences and puzzles by having done this. Unfortunately, this is not one of them. We do have to do this and get the Ultra Hammer now. Sorry, Super Hammer. Upon getting the Super Hammer, we want to switch to Mondette and blow up this wall. This will save us a little time later. And we want to immediately backtrack for the first stone key. Now we're doing a peril manip off of these stone chomps, so the specific actions we take are pretty important. We want to blow this guy up first. with Bomb. There is a backup in the route that you can use if you don't get this first strike, that's okay. But we want the Stone Chomp to hit us. We need to take 3 hits from Stone Chomps before getting to Toot and Koopa in order to have the fastest possible fight. So we take 1 from the Singleton after blowing up his friend with Bombette. And as with the Dark Koopas, you want to avoid those heart drops if you can. There is a backup. If you get a heart drop, that's okay. You can survive that. But it's generally a pretty big time loss. Unfortunately, we need the Super Hammer to get that key, so we can't do the fastest possible version of the ruins here. We do still have to take this bottom corridor. We do want to upgrade Bombette here. This is for a couple of reasons. Mostly for Chapter 6, but she's useful also as a backup for Stone Chomps if you somehow click do nothing, I guess. Okay, so here's where we're going to finish getting Peril. We're going to let these guys hit Mario. And now, because we have a Mega Rush boost, an untimed Power Quake is enough to kill both of them in one go. Getting Bombette to blow up that wall from the side that we just went through with the super block is a little tricky. Which is why we blew it up earlier, coming out of the Super Hammer room. It's important to try to grab the Lunar Stone from as far left as possible, because the Stone Chomp has an easier time dropping hearts on you, the further right you are on the pedestal, so be mindful of that. If you do get a hard drop here, it sucks, but your run won't die or anything. So we're gonna skip the heart block here. You'll notice that we're walking into this fight with a partner who cannot hit Toot and Koopa, and with only 1 HP and 4 FP. Fortunately, Toot and Koopa is enough of a pushover compared to the combination of Mega Rush and Power Bounce that this is easily winnable, even with our very low starting stats. So our fight here is going to be bounce times 4, switch to Paracarry, and then jump times 2, both on Toot and Koopa. Switching partners in battle saves a little bit of time if you'd be clicking do nothing otherwise. Toot and Koopa has 30 HP. He can 3-cap you, which means you would only do 15 damage with your power bounce, and then 12 from the jump times 2 is 27. But if he 3-caps you, it's not a big deal because we have super rank Paracarry and his Skydive does 3. So the fight barely changes. If you get 3-capped, it's just an inconvenience, basically. There are other bosses that can 3-cap you later that will kill you, however. I will make a point of when a boss like that is about to come up and let you know to save. So the context of this Peach scene changes a little bit. This is the pre-Chapter 3 one where you're gathering intel on how to defeat Tubba Blubba, or, you know, at least that he's the next person that you need to down. And the original dialogue that Peach eavesdrops on is that they're gossiping about how powerful Tubba Blubba is, and there's no way Mario will be able to defeat him because he's literally invincible. I would say that the tone of that conversation is significantly different when Mario has already defeated Tubba Blubba. I find it quite funny. I kind of like to imagine that they're just trash-talking him instead, since he's already been defeated. So you may be wondering, why didn't we just do chapters 1 through 3 glitchless with all of the song and dance we had to do with the story sequences? Between having Power Quake for the Stone Chomps and the Pokey fights we got to skip in Chapter 2, and the ruins already being up when we got here, it still ends up being faster to do it this way than playing 1 through 3 glitchless. At least that's the common knowledge. Someone who gets really into this route may end up finding that it's different in the future if they find a good way to optimize 1 through 3. But, yeah, so the first 3 chapters we did are the first 3 chapters in the game chronologically, even though we didn't do them in that order. Thanks, Bluehouse Skip. Coming up here is both our 4th time talking to Buzzar and our 4th train ride. Be sure to wish Buzzar goodbye, since they're likely going to be pretty lonely from here on out, not having Mario to talk to anymore. You know how when you go to the same place at the same time, like a coffee shop or something regularly, and they start to you start to get to know the staff, and they get to know you by name and what your order is and whatnot. I like to imagine there's a little bit of that going on in these Buzzar interactions, since we talk to them so much. So I imagine Buzzar is going to be fairly lonely now that we're not coming back to see them anymore. So, the next chapter that we're beating is Chapter 5, so we're just heading back there right now. With Sushi. The fact that we got Sushi means we don't have to do Bluehouse Skip again. We're also coming up on our 3rd glitch in the run, roughly an hour and a half in. This is Raft Skip. It's not difficult, but it is somewhat complicated. Be sure to take a look at the input display, and if you need more help, be sure to visit Paper Mario Archives for some more information and tutorials on the trick. It's worth taking an extra fall right there off the top scene to make sure that you're lined up correctly. If you're too low, you'll take a lava dip when you respawn from out of bounds, and that is very bad. It loses a ton of time to do that. Also worth noting, there's a platform cycle here. You can make the earliest one, it saves 15 to 16 seconds. If you don't make it, oh well, you know, it's not a huge deal. But it is worth noting that this is something you can do. I believe we get it here. Yeah, there we go. There's an optional trick in the next room called Volcano Jump. It saves about 5 seconds. You can jump out of bounds from the top ledge right there. But it is tricky. It's not super important to go for it. This badge fire shield is vital for Final Bowser. Do not forget that. Or you will have a very bad time trying to finish your run. There's another optional in this room called Lava Puzzle Skip, where you use Paracarry in a certain place to skip doing this puzzle entirely. It's not mandatory, but it does save a fair amount of time, so I definitely recommend going for that and learning it while you're doing runs of this route. There's another optional in here called Ultra Hammer Early that also saves about 5 seconds. But it's so difficult and it loses so much time if you miss it that it is just not worth going for generally unless you're playing on 8% and going for world record. You'll notice I walked into the lava 2 times. That was just a mistake, don't worry about it. You can Paracarry across with just the one block pushed. It is not as difficult as I made it look just now. We're going to want to get Peril in this room, and we do that by utilizing these fire bars. So, to get to the other side, we get hit by the fire bars a couple times for iframes to just go through, and then when you are on the fire bar right here, if you move and press either C right or C down, it removes your iframes for some reason, and that allows you to get Peril off of that fire bar super fast. We want to be at 1 HP heading into the Lava Piranha fight. Here's one of the tricks that this is optional, but it's so easy that you should probably just learn it. You can use Paracarry in a good position there to just kind of go through the wall. And here's something to note. If you're worried about getting 3-capped twice, which is like a 0.04% chance, you can die in the Lava Piranha fight. It can happen, and if you get a 4 and a 3 in Phase 1, you have to alter the order of your attacks a little bit. I didn't save here because that is just exceptionally unlikely to happen, but if you're really worried about it and just trying to finish a run for whatever reason, you should take that save block, just in case. Now for this fight, we're going to bounce up as high as we can, up to 5, sorry. If you get 4-capped, you want to do an untimed belly flop. That's to make sure if you get double forward, that he still dies. And you'll notice we're dying here. The life shroom that we picked up earlier is used in this fight. It is far faster than any other option we have to just tank these attacks, because the second bud and the head will put us back in peril if we don't block anything. Now there's a whole flowchart for this fight that's in the route that depends on your power bounce caps. I believe here we got double 4. No, we got 5 plus 4. So What that meant was 4 plus timed belly flop, and then the 5 bounce ends up just killing him. The belly flops are just in case of bad caps on the following turns. So now we get into phase 2. This is where Sushi really ends up being helpful. She allows us to deal extra damage to the head and also dispel the fire. It puts out the fire on him and stuns him a little bit. So we want to do Squirt, bounce times 4, and then bounce times 3 on the next turn. If you get 3 capped, it is not a big deal. You can just go for 3 cap on the next bounce too. If you get 3 capped both times, a belly flop will finish him off. If any of this is weird or confusing, just look at the flowchart on the integrated route on PMA. It will make sense. So that's Lava Piranha. We don't really need extra BP at this point, so we take an FP level up instead. It doesn't... You do want the FP, because it's faster. Upgrading BP instead would probably be workable. It would just be slow. So that's why we take the FP. As post-chapter 5 involves 99% cutscenes, there isn't going to be much to explain for the next few minutes. The speech intermission is fairly self-explanatory. It's just the quiz one from post-chapter 5. Every single Pape run has to do this one, so I'm sure you're plenty familiar with it already. Don't get caught by that guy, by the way. That was, that was inexcusable. Just pretend that didn't happen. The fastest way to get past this is to answer 1 to every question and then 2 to the final question. You can tell what question number you're on if you pay attention to the Hammer Bros text. You'll be able to see a number briefly scrolling by. So even if you lose track, it should be fine. Oh, right, the tutorial. Sorry, I fell asleep during all those cutscenes. So from this point, we're going to want to get the volcano vase that the Treasure Colorado is looking for and trade it to him for our 3rd magical seed. This is vitally important. If you don't do this now, you'll have to clear Chapter 5 again in order to give it to him and access Chapter 6, so this is vitally important to not forget this. So the next chapter we're going to beat is going to be Chapter 4. It's fairly self-explanatory. There will be a couple things to talk about during the fights, but for the most part, it's just like Chapter 2 in that we're re-triggering Chapter 4 in the middle of Chapter 4. We're entering it from a state where the game thinks Chapter 4 is already completed since we just finished Chapter 5. This causes pretty much all of the puzzles to be pre-solved, just like many of them were in Chapter 2. Which ends up saving us a substantial amount of time. So this is going to look a little weird. First we're going to take the switch, we're going to go to Green Station, and then we're immediately going to get back on the train, and we're going to head to Pink Station. And the reason that we're doing this is that we're taking an entire lap around the toy box, which is going to cause a sequence where we unlock part of the track. And you would think, wait, wouldn't going back in story reset that? However, there's a difference between flags and story progress indicators in this game. This switch right here that we pull, this is a flag and not a story-related deal. So once we do this once in our save file, it's done forever. Which is going to allow us to head from Pink Station to Red Station, despite the fact that we're not supposed to have that option yet. So, we're coming to Pink Station. This is how we re-trigger Chapter 4. There is a frying pan inside that chest, and obtaining that item resets our story progress to mid-4. And because we took that loop around, the toy box and pulled that lever, we are not going to have to solve the rest of Chapter 4 from this point on. We just have to hop on the train and go to Red Station. Also worth noting, there is a fuzzy fight here if you do the Chapter 3 card LZS. So just keep that in mind. You will have to Power Quake them, I believe. There's also an optional here where you can clip through the wall with Paracarry. It saves a little time to do it on the way there. Not on the way back, though. Either way, we're not doing that. The Pink Station wall clips are an optional. Be sure to check out Paper Mario Archives. And the only reason we're able to come to Red Station from the right like this is because we opened that track earlier. And since we have full stats, we're gonna head into the Lantern Ghost fight. You will want to save at Red Station before doing this. There is a roughly 2.5% chance that he gives you a 4-cap and then another 4-cap on your power bounces in this fight. If that happens, you will die, because we don't have a life shroom. So be very careful. You wanna make sure that you're saved before heading into this, unless you cannot afford to reset and still PB. So this is one of the more mechanics-based fights in Paper Mario. This guy cannot be hit unless you have the room illuminated from hitting his lantern. So what we're gonna do is use the Volt Shroom so he hits himself on us. This will do 2 damage and ease the RNG a little bit. We're gonna switch to Goombario. This is his shining moment, literally. He makes the room brighter. Because you need to hit the lantern twice to make it bright enough. Bo can do this as well, and if you're running on Wii VC, it's actually recommended to do it with Bo instead of Goombario. Because there are lag speedups present in this room on Wii VC. Anyway, we got a 5 bounce on our first one. He can 4-cap you. If he does it twice, then you die. So, again, that's why we save before this normally. This is what? She's vitally important for the Chapter 4 boss fight, and also Final Bowser, and also Crystal King, so she's pretty important. And we're immediately going to upgrade her with this block that the developers kindly put here. Getting to do more damage with Electro Dash is extremely powerful because that move doesn't cost any FP, and it ignores defense. Worth noting that we do need to walk into this fight with Peril and at least 9 FP. If you do not have 9 FP or Peril, there are backups, but they're really, really slow, so do not hit the heart block. Please do not hit the heart block before coming here. So this is a group of Shy Guys, that 15 of them. They do 1 damage each, and one of them dies for every point of damage you deal. With Mega Rush, combined with Jump times 2, and also an Electro Dash, they don't even get to attack. So this is Wave 2. We still have Power Quake on from earlier. These guys have 7 HP each and their own stilts. A timed Power Quake with Mega Rush equipped does 8 damage to each of them, so they also do not get a turn. These guys, unfortunately, do get a turn no matter what we do, because they have 10 HP. So what we do is we do jump times 1, which does, or jump times 2, which does 12 to take out the first stack. And then we use Power Shock on the second one, which has such a high multiplier, it's basically free to get this mash. And it immobilizes them so they do not kill us during this turn. And another jump times 2 moves us into the last phase of the fight. So at this point, we want to use the Repel Gel we picked up in Chapter 3. If you do not have that, I sincerely don't know how you would win this fight. The tank has 30 HP and 2 defense, so we need a few turns to get rid of it. There's no way around that. He has 2 random attacks between Lightning and Bomb. The Bomb attack is faster by like 2.5 seconds. We use the last of our FP on a bounce times 4 then there. That does 10 damage, so it's a little extra over jump times 2, and that lets us finish him off with a jump times 2 and another Electro Dash. You'll notice that we have 5 FP here. This doesn't normally take all of our FP, this does normally take all our FP if we do not do the card LZS. Because if we head in here with... If we have to do the fuzzy fight, we use 4 FP on a Power Quake to get rid of them. So if you're doing card LZS, this does take all of your FP. If you're not, you have a little extra to work with. You can use 3 of that extra FP to power bounce the first wave of Shy Guys if you want to. I did not do that because I want this to be as consistent with the expert route as possible. So here's Chapter 4. We're gonna bake a cake here. There's no getting around this unless you do Chapter 4 card LZS, at which point you should probably be doing the other route. Baking the cake is really slow. This is like a 6-minute segment of Peach stuff, so there are instructions in the route. I will mention what to do when we're there, but this is, like, if you know how to bake the cake, you can skip the next 5 or 6 minutes of this tutorial. For the first ingredient of the cake, we need the sugar and the eggs. They're second from the left, and then they're the things that look like eggs. I don't know why I grabbed the cream. It took me a second, I was like, wait a minute. Don't do what I do, just grab the sugar and the eggs, it ain't that hard. And then Twink is going to ask us to mash A for 10 seconds. You do not have to mash very hard for this, just look at the input display. This is like kind of a lazy mash. Now he's gonna ask for, I think, flour and butter? It's the far left, and then the jar on the right side. And then he's gonna ask us to bake the cake for 30 seconds. The timer, as far as the game's concerned, the timing starts when the oven ticks for the first time, it'll be silent, and then it'll go tick 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 tick. So on the first tick is when you start the timer. However, there's a catch to this. The range is extremely generous. It actually works if you bake it anywhere from 23 to 36 seconds. So you'll see here, I split prematurely for enter fields over here, and I'm using the segment timer below the overall run timer on the left side to determine when it is safe to take the cake out. This is a trick you can use if you have the if you have the segment timer. You don't have to do this, you can time it however you want, but having it done within live split is very convenient. And then you can undo your split by hitting your undo split button. For me, it's up on it's the up arrow key. So then you want to put on the cream and then the strawberries in that order. It's pretty clear what these are just visually. So that's your cake. I'll see you guys in like another minute and a half. Okay, so we're back. The next thing we're gonna do is we're going to get the 4th flower seed from Forever Forest, since we're about to enter Chapter 6. This is absolutely necessary, or we can't proceed, so... The directions for the forest, you'll see them here, but just for the record, in case you want to hear it, it's right 2, and then you get to the room where Oakley would normally be. He isn't, because we're entering this out of order. You go left 1, past the fuzzy. He will get you sometimes, sorry about that. You want to go left 1 again. And then from the next screen, you want to go left until you get to the flower path. And this is where the 4th seed is. And then you can exit right 1. That'll take you to the beginning of Forever Forest. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to get the quick change badge from Merlin's house. This is very important. It's used for the Huff and Puff boss fight and for Final Bowser. Do not go into Chapter 6 without having gotten quick change first. To get it, you enter Merlin's house and then do 3 spin jumps inside, and it will drop from the ceiling. This badge is very important. I cannot understate. Sorry, I can't overstate just how important that badge is to this route. And the expert route as well, for that matter. So we're gonna give her the seeds and enter Chapter 6 now. We can now enter Chapter 6. Just as a quick aside, we are going to be running around in peril again. Very briefly, if we make a significant mistake on the moles, you can die, because we still don't have a life shroom, so if you're moving too fast and not thinking about what you're doing, if something goes a little weird, it's possible to die, so I would hit the safe block here, if you're new to doing this, just to be sure. You are not likely to die here at all, if you're taking your time, but it's worth noting, at least. So we have the moles here, they're bothering Petunia. The order that we do this in is very important. Fight the bottom right mole first. And we're going to use Power Bomb and then Starstorm. The reason we're not doing Starstorm Power Bomb is because the end of the Starstorm animation will overlap with the moles dying. So if you're doing a fight like Power Bomb Starstorm, always make sure you do Starstorm second. The reason we fight these guys first is because we get a level up. It's to control when we level up, basically. And we're gonna level up BP. And then we're going to do another fight here. This is why this is a little dangerous. It's because we're going to let them give us peril here. So if we take another hit, we game over after doing this. So you want to do nothing with Mario and then Power Bomb with Bombette. And now since we're in peril, an untimed Power Quake will kill them. Just in case this information is important for you to back up at any time, they have 12 HP. Thus, a jump times 2 in peril kills them as well. Okay, we want the red berry, or a red berry. So this mole, it doesn't... You have to first strike him in some routes, but this isn't one of them. We have 10 FP available to use, so we just do an untimed Power Quake into Power Bomb, and it finishes them off. Easy peasy. And we're going to eat a Wacko's bump now that we're out of this fight. It gets our stats back to full. It is possible to mess up in a way that you die on the moles, which is why I mentioned to save before coming here. It's unlikely, because we're in peril for a very brief amount of time, but it has happened before, and it does happen for every now and again, where somebody will make a mistake and end up getting hit while in peril, so... this room is complicated. Watch very closely what we do. There are a couple faster ways to do this room than what I'm about to show you, but this is very safe. You want to get his attention, kind of walk a circle around him, get that guy's attention, spin back so he loses you. Get the berry, get his attention, back off, and then you do another, like, half circle around the bee to get out. You can skip the first trip through that room with another optional called Yellowberry Skip. I do not recommend doing this. It's a difficult LZS trick that only saves about 12 seconds. You can do it if you want to. I'm not your boss. But if you're new to... If you're new enough that you're using this route without Clippy, I would guess that you're probably not comfortable with LZS yet, so I wouldn't try it. But it's definitely something you can learn if you're planning to run this category at a top level eventually. So the reason we had to do that was a story trigger, reason. We had to talk to Lily, and we need a blueberry here. It's a good idea to hit the invisible block here, because you're going to need that shooting star later. I forgot to do it on the way there, but it's easiest to hit the coin block on the way there and then get the shooting star on the way out. It's not a huge time loss if you do it all at once on the way out. It's just safer, so keep that in mind. Again, we have an issue with Starstorm, where Starstorm needs to be done second, because 1, it overlaps that Lakitu's death with the Spinies, and 2, because the end overlaps as well. So this guy's gonna attack us. You can get Spiny spawn. If you do, you need to use your Thunder Rage here, and then we pick up another one later. As a result, we did not get Spiny spawn here, so no big deal. It does affect... It does have a small effect on when you level up later, if you get the Spiny spawn or not. It does not cause any serious issues, however, so, you know, don't really worry about it. It's not too big of a time difference between the two. And this is where we eat the second Whack-A-Bump if we do not level up after that fight. You have to get pretty unlucky to level up there with your Fright Jars, but it is worth noting that's where we eat the second Whack-A after the maze fight. If we don't level. So now that we've talked to the flower with the water stone, we're gonna come down here and get something beautiful to trade for it. Wow, I forgot so many times to get that shooting star. There is a backup if you forget that one, but please just get it. Don't be like me. Yeah, this is where I finally remembered to get that. You can see that that Spiny makes getting this terrifying, which is why you want to hit the coin block on the way there and get the shooting star on the way back. It just avoids all terror. Unfortunately, I didn't avoid the terror, but you, the viewer, have the opportunity to make better choices than me. Learn from my mistakes. We want this Dizzy Dial. It's very important for a fight coming up near the end of Chapter 6. If you're scared of getting hit by the bee or anything later, you can get that second Bubble Berry as a backup. However, since you need to get hit 3 times by Lackey, you need to be, like, it's only worth doing if you're confident you can block the hit from the bee. Speaking of that, there is a first strike coming up that you have to get pretty unlucky for it to happen, but you can't avoid it, so it's worth picking up the extra bubble berry if you're not confident, or if you think you might need it. By the way, don't go here. This was that was kind of a brain fart on my part. So you want to give the bubble berry to this plant, and this is where the unavoidable first strike occasionally happens. Usually it's a neutral encounter, or even you first striking him. But if that bee wants to get you, it's just gonna happen. You can avoid this by doing early lackey, but that's another LZS trick, and it's arguably even more difficult than yellow berry skip, so I don't recommend that. So you can see he saw me before I was able to move. Fortunately, he was far enough away that it was fine. We do want that shooting star. The reason that we get that shooting star and the other one a little bit earlier is because there are a couple fights in Chapter 7 that we would be Star Storming otherwise, and Star Storm is a lot slower than using an item. I'll note here that it is slightly faster to switch to Paracarry out of battle. For this, you don't have to do that though. It's like 3 frames or something, maybe 5, to switch in battle with quick change. So if you forget, who cares? It doesn't matter, ultimately. So this fight you might want to practice before attempting your first run, because you need to block all of Lackey's attacks in order for the fight to go well, and the block timing is a little tricky. So just be mindful of that. There is no shame whatsoever in saving before attempting this. You'll notice that we did nothing on turn 1 with Paracarry. It's just to save time because the extra damage doesn't matter. If you get 4-capped here, you need to do a skydive with Paracarry to make up the damage. This is uncommon, though. And here's our next level up. We're gonna take BP again, getting set up for our Chapter 7 and 8. We do need a fair amount of BP, especially for Chapter 8. I believe that's our last BP upgrade, though. So it doesn't matter what you say to Lackey, but answer 1 and then answer 2 are the fastest. So that's what we do. Yeah, I make a pretty severe mistake here in a second, but it's good for showing a fast backup for if this happens. My upright was there. I started my spin from too far away, and my upright angle wasn't aggressive enough, so I got first struck by the bee. Even if you make these mistakes that I just did, it is still unlikely to get caught here. But basically, if this happens, you're gonna want to finish this next fight as normal, because it doesn't matter what your stats are, you finish it with items. So we're just gonna, for now, we just continue the run as if nothing happened. So there's this puzzle right here that we have to solve with Lackey and the Super Boots. Okay, there is an invisible block with a Thunder Rage in it right about here, between those 2 patches of flowers that I just passed by. That is where you're going to want to get your Thunder Rage from if you used it on the maze fight. Speaking of interesting fights, this is one of the cooler fights that we do in the run. This Dizzy Dial has a 100% chance of immobilizing the Lakitus and 75 on the Magic Koopa. However, if it doesn't immobilize the Magic Koopa, his scripting is kind of interesting. He will not attack you unless all of his allies, except other Magic Koopas, have an electric charge. So he just spends his free turns doing this while you're killing everyone. So you want to Thunder Rage and then Starstorm. It's just fastest to do it that way for menuing reasons. The Starstorm will overlap with their deaths as well, which is another reason you want to finish with it. Now, if you have less than max HP and max FP, you need to do a backup here, because the next thing we're going to do is fight Huff and Puff. So we're going to break the machine really quick, and then I'll explain what the backup is after these cutscenes. Okay. I believe... No, I didn't. I believe that the backup that's important here... Oh, by the way, if you can't find that Thunder Rage I mentioned and you need it, check out Paper Mario Archives, the route integrated on PMA. It'll tell you where. So you need to talk to Wise Wisterwood anyway to progress what you're doing. So... what we do, if you have less than max stats, it's really not that slow to come back to town and take this Toad House. It's very conveniently placed right next to flower fields. So just take a nap here. It'll get you back to max stats without you needing to use any resources. Another option you have, if you're at 6 out of 10 HP like I was, is you can go to either the yellow berry room or the red berry room and consume 2 berries of either kind. That also works. But I chose to go through Wise Wisterwood because you have to talk to him anyway in order to plant the beanstalk here. Worth noting as well, if you're worried about about dying and not being able to continue your run, go hit the save block after watching this cutscene. Huff has a roughly 2% chance of 3-capping you on your charged bounce, and if that happens, it's game over since we don't have a life shroom. So please, if you're doing your first run, or if you can afford to reset to Huff and still PB, please just hit the save block. It will save you a lot of pain, should Paper Mario decide to be especially cruel to you. I chose not to do it this time, because it's a low chance, and I was ready to just start over, you know, if it happened. But seriously, please, please, please just hit the save block, especially if you're new. So we need that badge up there. It's called Super Jump Charge. You can reset the cloud cycles by taking that loading zone and then coming back immediately, and that actually saves time over just waiting for the cloud, believe it or not. Don't forget this rebadge right here. It's written on the integrated route of PMA, but if you do not have Super Jump Charge on, and Quick Change, and Power Bounce, etc., you will die. So this is our first instance of using a charge fight. It's really, really fast to use Super Jump Charge and Power Bounce together with a Mega Rush boost in order to take out these bosses. The problem mainly just being that Power Bounce can randomly cap you. On Huff, this isn't a huge deal. In most routes, because most routes you have a life shroom when you take this fight. But here it is. And since we only have 10 FP, we quick change to bow in order to out-of-sight the wind attack. This is the fastest attack to avoid with out-of-sight, because if it hits you, it has a really long animation while it determines how much damage you take. So, you want to block one and unblock one of the body slams, and that gets you into barrel, where you can finish them off. The reason you don't want to hit him with your partner is because the top pops really complicate things when it comes to manipulating Peril. He can 4-cap you. If he 4-caps you, you quick change to Paracarry and Shell Shot. So it's not a huge deal if you get 4-capped, but 3 is too much damage that you'll be missing, so you will die if that happens. Remember, save, save, save. Especially if you're new at this. This Peach scene is also in every single Pape run. It's the one where you transform into the Clubba, and to get permission to go up to a secret meeting. It's a lot of just walking around and transforming into characters, so you guys know what to do. And if you don't know what to do, it'll be apparent to tell just by watching, so I'm gonna give my voice a little break. So the lore reason for why Peach gets caught here is kind of funny. Kami Koopa, I guess, is familiar with this dude that you're transformed into, and I guess he smells kind of grody because her lore explanation for realizing that you're actually Peach is because you smell too nice, which is kind of funny. You might notice that our next split here is Enter Palace, and you would think that this would be a huge single split, but this is actually where we're going to do our fourth glitch, Peach Warp. What Peach Warp does for us in this context is it skips us all the way to the end of Chapter 7, because the game thinks we are in thinks that we're in a Chapter 7 state right now. So by triggering the end of the volcano sequence, it makes the game think that we cleared the chapter we were on, which is Chapter 7, according to the game at the moment. So what we're gonna do to take advantage of that is we're going to go get the Ultra Boots first, which are right next to this. We need them for block clip and for damage. So we're gonna head over here. The movement in this room is kind of complicated. If you have to go back and look at the input display, feel free. That's one of the harder rooms to avoid encounters in the game, both on the way there and on the way back. So we're gonna get our first backup life shroom here, 2.5 hours into the run. If you use that exact movement, wait for the Koopa to see you before you tornado jump into the block. Again, this whole area is kind of scary, so, you know, the input display is your best friend for figuring out how to get through that safely. So now that we have a backup life shroom, you can be a little less scared in your movements, basically. But it's kind of funny that now we have the backup life shroom after we've spent all of this time running around in peril. You do need one life shroom for final. There's one you can get in the jail as well. We'll be getting that too, just for you to see it. But I like that life shroom in the sewers because it comes earlier, and if, you know, goodness forbid, like, something really, really bad happen, you have the life shroom to save you. So we're going to, you might be wondering why we're going through the volcano again. The end of the volcano erupting sequence does not have a story segment update in it, which means that since the game thinks we're in Chapter 7, it has something that causes it to complete the chapter you're on, but it doesn't set your story progress at any point during this retread of the volcano. So by doing Peach Warp and accessing that area you're not supposed to be able to anymore, you can trick the game into thinking you've finished whatever chapter you're in the middle of. Whether that be 6 or 7 or even 8. Although if you do it in a Chapter 8, say, the game soft locks. This is definitely a trick where a lot goes into it. It's going to be kind of hard to explain on the fly. You want to clip out there, and if you clip out in the right spot, you'll be able to hold down right and get here. And then we're going to perform a wacky teleport to get to clip across this right here. If you need help with that, definitely check out Paper Mario Archives. It's the best source of information on this game anywhere. So, yeah. That is Peach Warp, and now the game thinks we've cleared Chapter 7. But wait, we have to enter the palace. We haven't collected the Chapter 7 card. Well, the cool thing about doing this is that the door that enters you into Crystal Palace itself is a storyline update. So you can just, you Peach Warp, talk to Kalmar, and then you go back into Crystal Palace to save Kalmar. Which is very funny. So now, by taking this story trigger, we are now in Chapter 7 proper, thus skipping the entire front 2/3 of the chapter. Peach Warp is a fairly lengthy sequence, but it still saves so much time over doing things glitchless. So the first thing we do in Palace is that we go down here and get the blue key. If we do not do this, the next trick will softlock us. So that's why we're back there doing that. Next, we're going to do Mirror Clip, which is, again, I have to recommend you go to PMA for this. You can check the input display as well, but it's a 3-frame window, and only 1 frame is when Lackey is on screen. So you'll need a lot of practice to get this down, but this skips some backtracking and a Duplighost fight. So it's definitely better. It's definitely a good idea to learn this. Most of the rest of the palace is going to be glitchless, however. The bombette that you do not want to hit is the second one from the right. Hit all the other ones here. It doesn't matter in what order, just as long as you don't hit the true one. Coming up in this hallway, we have 3 fights. 2 of them are the same, but this first one utilizes a property of the Magic Koopas. The ones that are not blue will all run away if they're the only enemy in the formation. So by doing jump ×2 bomb on this Clubba, killing him really fast, this guy just jets. Important to note that we don't want to kill him for EXP reasons, so we don't level at a bad time. These next 2 fights are just shooting star power bomb using the 2 shooting stars that we picked up in Chapter 6. Also, we're gonna level here, and we're gonna take HP as our level up, because 15 HP is the correct amount to have for Crystal King, and also for Final Bowser, using the fight that we currently do. Pretty much all the fights from here on are just better with 15 max HP. It makes for easier barrel maneups. Here's a trick called Cooper Puzzle Skip. Or rather, we would do it, but it's an optional. This trick is not that hard, but if you fail it, if you don't know exactly what you're doing, it'll take a while to get it, longer than it would to just solve the puzzle, because Honestly, just hitting them isn't that slow, as you'll see here in a second. If you do want to learn Cooper Puzzle Skip, I would honestly say it's one of the easier tricks in the run to learn if you just want to add an optional into your run for Spice. So if you are interested, you already know what I'm going to say by this point. Check out Paper Mario Archives. It is the best source for information on these things on the entire internet. We need that jam and jelly we just picked up for Chapter 8. Do not forget that. There is a backup if you do forget it, but it's way faster to pick this one up. This badge is also very important for Chapter 8, so the entire leg of this trip is very important. By the way, this isn't a duplighost. This guy's really thick, so be careful when you're coming back through this room. It's easy to accidentally hit him, as you can see. Avoiding that duplighost that I just spun past is tricky. This is definitely another one where you're going to want to look at the input display and watch it a few times just to get a good grasp on what you're doing. You can also, like, lure him and run around him in a circle, but that's significantly slower. Despite the fact that we have quick change, it is faster to swap to Watt while that door is unlocking. Because it's a door that you cannot open instantly. Locked doors in this game, some of them you can open instantly after using the key, and some you have to wait for the animation of the lock to finish. If you have a partner swap to do, it is faster to... If you have a partner swap to do and you have a door that doesn't unlock immediately, it's faster to do your partner swap while the animation is playing, as a rule of thumb. This is another fight where you can die. Even though we have the backup life shroom, your odds of winning this fight if you get 3-capped are very low. It's possible. It's far more possible than Huff. Than beating Huff. Because, you know, we have the life shroom and he doesn't immediately attack you if he 3-caps you. But I would still definitely recommend hitting the save block. The backup is so slow and so, like, wishy-washy on whether or not it'll work that it is better generally to just reset and start the fight over if you get 3-capped. So that's another place where you want to be really careful and save. So we're going to do some damage to both Crystal King and his bits. If you destroy any of the crystal bits, that's one less attack he'll do in his, like, little barrage. So we destroyed 2 of the bits and block 2 of the 4 hits that we take from his 2 turns in order to get into peril. I choose to just block the first 2 and then unblock the second set, just because it's easier for me. But the fastest way to do it would be to unblock the first one, block the second in both salvos. Either way, I would really recommend just blocking 2 out of 2 and then 0 out of 2. Don't forget we have one more charge turn here while he's summoning the bits. If you bounce early, you are probably going to die. And we get a 5-cap, and he's dead. And there's our 7th card. So you might be wondering why I saved before Crystal King and not before either of the other fights that can kill you. During one of my attempts to record footage for this, I did get 3-capped on Crystal King and died, and I had to start over. So I went to the door and then I kind of had a little flashback of what happened previously, so I went back and hit the save block. You should always just hit the save block. All the way up until the point where you cannot PB if you have to reload your save. This is something I will personally stand by as being a good policy when you're learning Pape. So now we need to head back to Toad Town. Aside from grabbing an item on our way back, which I'll point out, there isn't, and an upgrade block, there isn't a whole lot of importance in this segment. There is a Shooting Star and a Thunder Rage here. You shouldn't need these for any reason, but they are there. It's worth noting. We have to upgrade Sushi. Either we do it at this block, or we do it in the block in the room with all the ice and the sewers that we're gonna pass through. The one on the stairs is slightly faster, which is why I did that here. But the one in the sewers doesn't have an encounter risk, so I definitely recommend going for that one if you're not comfortable getting around that clubba. The repel gel we need for final is behind this tree right here. The rest of this is just a backtrack to Shooting Star Summit after this room. Be careful in this room, it's really easy to get licked by these guys. I don't know what their deal is, but yeah, just don't get touched by them, it loses a fair amount of time. Anyway, I will let you know on Star Wave what the movement is, but otherwise I'll see you in a few minutes. This movement is very difficult. I recommend checking the input display out and trying to reproduce this on your own. This is a room I would frankly practice before attempting runs. It's not as big a deal as, like, final Bowser blocks or Huff blocks or Crystal King blocks, but losing time to those embers is very frustrating, and I would really recommend that you check out Random Sauce's video, or I think it was Random Sauce who made it anyway. There are a couple videos and a couple different methods that different runners use. I would watch several different runners do that and then decide what is easiest for you. The way I did it is pretty comfy for me personally, but not everybody not everybody likes doing it that way, so no shame. The most important thing is that you get out of that room without taking any encounters. It's always faster to avoid them even if you have to run away for a bit. Welcome to Chapter 8. This is the last time we're going to be pressing A and Start to clear a chapter intro card. Swapping out of battle is a little faster than using Quick Change. If you have not leveled up yet, I believe is the requirement. Like, if you have 90-something EXP, you can kill these guys. The exact details are in the route integrated on Paper Mario Archives. But basically, if you haven't leveled up yet, kill them. If you have leveled up yet, don't. This last level up is going to be FP. It'll make Final Bowser and the End Gauntlet just a little faster. If you can't kill them, by the way, you use Up and Away as your star power, and if it doesn't work, use Up and Away again. This room right here, the movement I just did there is fairly advanced. You should try to replicate that, because it's really fast. If you can't, you can just lure them, and then get out of their way. Or, you know, jump over them or whatever. Whatever works best for you is the most important thing there. If you do end up getting hit by them, you'll just have to take a heart block later before fighting the Dupligos. No biggie. So this is the life shroom that you'll get if you don't get the sewers one, or you can get both just to be careful. That's what I did here. And coming up here, we're not going to play Bowser's Basement as intended. We don't really like that, so we're gonna use Lackey and combine it with our next glitch, our 6th one. It's called Block Clip, and it allows you to skip the entire basement sequence of Bowser's Castle. By the way, if you're really, really scared, you can get that life shroom too. That's what's in that block that we're passing by right now. You do not need 3. You should never need more than 2 life shrooms for the ending if you do everything correctly. Even if you get extremely unlucky, but that life shroom is there just in case you're worried or you lost one earlier or something. Okay, so for Block Clip, you want to line yourself up in a very specific place and Tornado Jump, and then from that position, use Paracarry. That's it. This is really easy and really fast to learn, and it skips the entire lava basement plus blind basement part of Bowser's Castle. You do have to do this room a 2nd time, though. And that is a fairly scary room, so, you know, understandable if you get an encounter or 2 there. It really isn't a big deal. So that's door 1. You'll notice that my doors are named Warden Door and Quiz Door. I decided to do that on the splits just so it's, like, more clear what they are, because door 1 and door 2 is kind of confusing if you don't know what's going on, but I was told that Warden Door didn't really make things less confusing, which is fair, so yeah, it's door 1 and door 2 is the common vernacular in the Pape community. And here we're going to do Fast Flood Room. This is another one where you should definitely check out Paper Mario Archives. You're going to want to use Lackey to clip through fences a lot here. There's a lot of clipping with Lackluster. Starting right here. And then another one right here to get back up. And we're going to hit that switch, and then we're going to clip out again. If you do not clip out and then back in right here, you actually will not be able to fall through that gap. I don't really know why that is. But what we're doing here is we're getting out of bounds on that seam. If you're not very careful, you can soft lock. So this is... If you want to just do Flood Room normally, there's nothing wrong with that. Otherwise, I would look at the input display for the parts that where you couldn't see what was going on with Mario. And just in general, the input display is a good tool. If you still can't get this, you know, for whatever reason, it's not the easiest. I get it. Trust me, everyone soft locks to Fast Flood Room at least a few times in their Pape lives. Definitely check out PMA for more info. So this is cannonless. It's another trick. It's an out-of-bounds clip. And then this one's kind of fast. You want to get up onto that ledge right there. And we're kind of out of bounds, which is why we can just go past the cannons. Again, check out PMA for more info. Those were our 7th and 8th glitches. So here I decided to just show this off. This is an example of that thing I talked about earlier with the spear guy. Because I hit the dry bones, the bone that the dry bones threw at me with Sushi as the active partner, he forgot how to throw bones, so he just runs at you slowly. And that basically ensures that you will not be first struck while you're attempting to push these blocks. This is a more complicated lure. You want to get him barely far left, and then spin up. He needs to be, like, as close to the front of the screen and as left as possible to get the best outcome, generally. If you get first struck by him, it's like, whatever. You just need to hit a hard block afterwards. And thankfully there's one right here. So it really is not a big deal if that guy gets you. It's just annoying. And slow. So here's the quiz. The answers are 11211. This does not change between playthroughs. If you've watched this far, I would like to say, number one, thank you for supporting Pape Races and their tutorial work. They've been doing a whole lot of work behind the scenes, especially Ari, who is behind Paper Mario Archives. We're just about at the end now. All that's left is the final boss gauntlets and a few rooms of movement. There's the backup Jam and Jelly, by the way, if you forgot the one in Chapter 7. It's down off by that ledge on those stairs we just climbed. yeah, thank you for supporting Pape Races. Thank you for supporting Paper Mario Archives. Bowser will be down within about 15 minutes, and yeah, just... also, these Hammer Bros, you're going to want to react to their positions to get around them. They're very difficult encounters to avoid. Yeah, thank you so much, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the Paper Mario Speedrunning Discord, or in the Pape Races Discord, you know, just wherever, and somebody will be by to help you. We have some very knowledgeable and kind people that will help you out. If you're missing any HP or FP for any reason, hit this hard block before proceeding. In order to trigger the Duplighost fight after hitting Peach, you need to do 3 full spins left after speaking to the Duplighost. It's easy to not go far enough on accident if you're trying to save time. Okay, for this fight, you're going to use Up and Away, which has a 95% chance of working on each individual Duplighost. That gives this like an 80.5, 81%-ish, I forget, chance of working on all 4 of them. If one of them doesn't run away, switch to Paracarry and airlift it. You have Quick Change on. If 2 don't run, you do the same thing and then airlift again on the next turn. If more than that don't run, you just have to Up and Away again. Also, switching to Paracarry is correct before this fight, not what. This was a small mistake. Remember, if there's any discrepancy between what the route says and what this video does, always listen to the route over the video. And make sure that if you have done more than 1 airlift, that you go hit that hard block. Especially if you've taken damage. So this is another charge fight. We use Quick Change here. I decided to Quick Change to Paracarry because Shell Shot's faster than E-Dash. And then we're gonna Quick Change to Bow and Out of Sight. We're gonna charge again, and on the next turn we kill him. So you can get 3-capped in this fight as well. If that happens, the backup is unfortunately to block 2 hits from him again when he uses magic on you. So you'll die, you'll use refresh, and then if he heals, just do jump times 2 on him if he doesn't have the spike. And you'll eventually bounce to finish him off after he gives you Peril back. It is a somewhat difficult backup because that magic block comes kind of fast, so if you have to do that, I'm sorry. Getting 2-capped is only a 2% chance, but it is very real, so just be careful. That might be something you want to practice before starting runs. It's really up to you, though. Most of the time, if a runner gets 3-capped, they just accept the death of the run. But you do not have to do that, especially if you've saved recently. So here we come to Hallway Bowser. We want to unequip Charge, Charge and Power Quake to equip Power Jump and PFD down. We're already in peril, so because we're already in peril, we want to just Power Bounce, Out of Sight, Power Bounce, and he will sometimes die to this. Sometimes he'll cap you too much and prevent you from killing him in 2 turns. But if he does that, there's a secret. In the Hallway Bowser fight, he is not actually invincible when he powers up with Starbeam. It just increases his defense by 4. So if even if he double 3-caps you, and you don't have nearly enough damage, doing power jump, even with his shield up, will usually kill him. And if that doesn't kill him, doing out of sight and then power jump again on the following turn definitely will. Unfortunately for the sake of demonstration, we got a 2-turn fight here. But, just in case you do, not get a 2-turn, you can just hit him through. That's why we have power jump equipped. And now we're heading up to Final Bowser. There is one more rebadge. Do not forget it. I will emphasize it several times when we're on the ledge before Bowser. If you do not do this rebadge, or if you forgot Fire Shield like 2 hours ago, you are going to either have a very, very slow final fight, or you will die. So definitely remember this. I'd also emphasize that practicing this fight with Final Bowser before runs is, like, absolutely necessary if you're new to the game. So the rebadge here is taking off Speedy Spin for Fire Shield. And we are now set to go into Final Bowser. This fight is a beautiful example of fantastic routing. The execution level on it is moderate, which is, like, you have to practice your Bowser blocks before attempting a Paper Mario run. It doesn't really matter what category you're doing. You need to practice your blocks as much as it takes for you to hit them 90% consistent. There is a save block before Final, thankfully, but please, please, please practice your blocks. It is so important to be able to nail this first try. Every reset on Final is like 5+ minutes. So to start this, in Phase 1, we power bounce him as high as he lets us, and then we out of sight, and then we do it again. And that's Phase 1. So we got a 3 bounce there. The higher caps we get, the better, but Phase 1 Final Bowser's multiplier is particularly brutal. As you can see, we got 2 3s, which was the absolute minimum damage that can come out of this. He has a 50% chance of 3-capping you, as opposed to Junior's 2% chance of doing so. So if it happens, it's not shocking, unfortunately. It just means you will need to get higher bounces in Phase 2, which is pretty likely, so it's no big deal. The fight with Cammy is just hold B and mash A, so just enjoy the ambiance until we come back for Phase 2. As a personal aside really quick, the track that plays between the Cammy fight and Phase 2 is called Wish of the Princess, and it is incredible. This is always the track that gets my blood pumping when I'm heading into Final on pace. Alright, here we go into Phase 2 Final. This is going to be pretty rapid fire, so feel free to rewatch if you need to. First turn, we start off with a Peach Beam. The reason that we have our current setup with PFD down, Fire Shield, and we upgraded Sushi is so that we take exactly 7 damage from all of Bowser's attacks when blocked. This is why practicing your blocks is so important. So we Peach Beam, and then we switch to Sushi, and we get Water Block up. So now every attack will do 7, which means 2 will always put us into peril every single time. This turn, we're not in peril yet, so doing a Power Jump and a Shell Shot is the best damage per turn we're able to do outside of peril at the moment. We're gonna take another hit, which gets us into peril. We do Power Bounce. Get a bunch of damage out. 6 cap is extremely unusual. That was very lucky. And then we're gonna out of sight here. He's either going to shield now or he'll shield next turn. It doesn't matter which turn he does it, with the route the way it's written. So now we're going to apply the Repel Gel we got in Chapter 7 as we were leaving. And now he shields. This is fine. This is pretty normal. Actually, I think this is like exactly the average fight that we got here. So we're going to use Peach Beam, take his shield off again. And we're gonna swap to Watt, and we're gonna use Turbo Charge. This increases the damage of every single hit of Power Bounce by 1. Which sets us up to do a lot more damage in the final 2 attacks of this fight. So we're gonna Power Bounce. Note we're starting at 7 now, thanks to Watt. And we're gonna swap back to Bow and out of sight using Quick Change. Quick Change and Quick Change, Water Block, Fire Shield, PFD down, Mega Rush, Power Bounce are all absolutely vital to this fight working. It also happens to be very fast. And there we go, Bowser is down. Now, there are a lot of variants to this fight, and if you get very unlucky and get 3-capped on all 5 of your bounces, you will lose one of your life sherms, and then have to finish him off with different moves, depending on how much HP he has left. So you want to do a total of 7 extra damage with bounces beyond the minimum of getting 3-capped on every single one for this fight to be fast. You still win every time if he takes a life shroom, because 7 is the highest HP value he can have after taking your life shroom, and at no point during this fight is he able to heal. There are a lot of variants based on the caps, as I just went through, but there are also variants that change based on when he uses his Star Shield for the first time after you take it off. You will want to use the integrated route on Paper Mario Archives to follow what happens when you get to, or based on what turn he shields on. It's all written out there nice and formatted well for you to read and understand. So the last input for the run is holding B on Peach's last dialogue before she raises her hands, because that's the last input before the credits, so there's pretty much nothing to do or talk about in these last 5 minutes, other than, I guess, Luigi skip when we get there, but also shoutouts to Ari, who's the creator of Paper Mario Archives. Shoutouts to the team at Pape Races that asked me to do this. It was a lot of work, but it was pretty fun. I had a good time doing it. Shoutouts to the Paper Mario speedrunning community. It's full of a lot of kind and welcoming players that we're always glad to see new faces. So yeah, enjoy Epilogue. Really quick, there's a final trick here. We're not even sure if it's a glitch 100% in the community. It's called Luigi Skip, and you just hold down when Mario jumps on the pipe, and it skips like a 7-second cutscene with Luigi. Right here. So, yep, there we go. There's that down input. We're gonna do a rebadge here. You don't have to do this. You can take Power Jump off and equip Speedy Spin. I messed it up right there. It saves like a second if you do it well. If you're like really fast, it saves 1 second over doing this without Speedy, I think. So maybe it saves 2. I'm not sure, but it's small. It's not a big deal, and you don't have to do it. Bungling it can lose way more time than just not doing it. So here's the end. Time for this category, and all Pape categories except Ace, are when Peach raises her hands here in about 8 seconds. And there we go. So, closing thoughts. This route is not great. I mean, the route itself is fantastic, given the limitations on it, by not doing Clippy Boots. However, if you're looking for a starting point to get into all cards, this is what you're looking for. If you're looking to grind this category, this ain't it. If you're looking to grind this or get a good time, I highly recommend checking out the expert tutorial that Morpheus has been working on, also as requested by Pape Races. Yeah, let me go ahead and pause the video because it'll reset otherwise. So, yeah. Where do I think this route can go? I think, as it is, if you exclude some of the mistakes and bad luck that I got, I think this route, as I did it here, probably peaks at, like, 310, 311, maybe a 309, if everything is really good. You can push it down a fair bit further by doing several of the optionals I mentioned while doing the run. That said, if you want to get a better time in this category, your number one and number 2 most important things. Number 1 would be learning Clippy Boots, which is necessary for the other route to work. It is a soft lock risk, and it's not the easiest trick in the world, but it saves an absolutely massive amount of time and lets you do the chapters in a completely different order in a way that, saves a lot of time. The second one would be to learn card LZS. This skips baking the cake. It's just like six-ish minutes on its own. It skips the other 2 cutscenes, the post-chapter 2 one where you go to the library, and the post-chapter 3 one where you talk to Bowser. And also it skips talking to the Star Spirits. Card LZS saves an absolutely massive amount of time, And that and Clippy Boots would be the most important places to go next from learning this. If you're comfortable with doing card LZS but not other types of LZS, and you do Clippy Boots, you can move on to the intermediate route, which is also integrated on Paper Mario Archives. It's like a halfway point between this route and the expert route that Morpheus is doing a tutorial of. So, shout outs to anybody who watched the whole thing. Seriously, thank you. Shout outs to Paper Aces again. Shout outs to Andis and Icewind for routing this. I didn't have to make very many changes to optimize it. There were just a few things. And yeah, thank you. And enjoy Paper Aces. Take care.